Okay, welcome to Startup Nation. This week we've taken the show on the road. We're here at Detroit Startup Week, a week-long celebration of entrepreneurship. We're going to be interviewing guests today from the Lear Center in downtown Detroit. Hot city, hot show ahead on Startup Nation. All right, we are indeed live at the Techstars Startup Week Detroit, powered by Quicken Loans in partnership with Venture Catalyst. We also want to acknowledge our sponsors, DBusiness, Siren PR, and Dell. And we've got Managing Director of Techstars Detroit, Ted Serbinski, with us. We've also got RJ King co-hosting these various live streams today, RJ from DBusiness and Our Media. And Ted, this is quite a thing here happening right here in Detroit. There's a lot of energy in Detroit in general, but this really brings it all together and it puts it right out there. It's great stuff.
Yeah, it's great to be here today and just this celebration of entrepreneurship in Detroit. And as we see the region really come back and entrepreneurship driving a lot of what change we're seeing around Detroit.
I know, RJ, we want to get kind of the history of the program. Ted, can you give us some background and just kind of, set the table for us on how all this came to be?
Yeah, so Techstars is a global organization that helps entrepreneurs succeed. It started in Boulder in 2006 with the basic premise of how could you help 10 entrepreneurs build their businesses? And the core way that we've done that is these 90-day accelerator programs. And we have 45 of these programs all around the world. 5 years ago, Techstars was looking at Detroit. This was before the bankruptcy, and trying to understand Detroit has this University of Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State, these great universities, proximity to Canada, and this amazing automotive industry that was just coming out of this huge kind of auto crisis. And it had all the right ingredients, entrepreneurship at the university level, at the industry level. Could they bring an early stage program here? And so 5 years ago, that was the hypothesis of bringing Techstars Mobility to Detroit, one of those 90-day accelerator programs.
And you've done that more. What have you guys, so you launched, was it 4 years ago now?
Yep.
4 years ago.
Yeah, so the day we actually officially launched was the day Detroit exited bankruptcy. So the front page of the Detroit Free Press on, I think, December 11th, 2014, Detroit exit bankruptcy, largest municipal bankruptcy in the world. Techstars coming to town to help bring entrepreneurs and revitalize. And I think it was a great juxtaposition of the change that we were going to see over the next 5 years.
Transformation, right there on the front page. Yeah, really cool. RJ.
Ted, if you can talk about some of the companies that have gone through the program over the last 4 years, and I think initially it was a focus on mobility, but now it's truly now Techstars Detroit.
Right. When we originally started, it was focused on mobility. So where's the future of automotive, self-driving cars going? And this was before GM had acquired Cruise for $1 billion. So when we launched it, everyone was like, what are you doing? And we had tapped into Fontanalis and Bill Ford's group, and they really said, you got to use the word mobility. That's going to be the best word. And so the first year was a struggle. Second year, everyone's like, you guys are brilliant. And then how did you figure this out? And it's like, we had great mentors, great support. Bill Ford really had that vision. We just tapped into helping the entrepreneurs. And as we've seen with time, as the industry has evolved, now that everything is mobility, whether it's auto or healthcare or agriculture, we had to really think about what is the word that we're using. And really, we came back to it's really Detroit. What is Detroit good at? And Detroit is good at mobility and all these other things. And that's really our core. And so we've had, over the last 4 years, 44 companies from 8 different countries come here. And even though we run the program in Detroit, we invest all over the world. And our biggest thing is, how do we change entrepreneurs' perception of Detroit and doing business here? And by bringing them all around the world, they build connections here, they may relocate here. A couple of the success stories we've seen, one company, Split, SPLT, relocated from New York City. It was a female founder that relocated her company here, and later Bosch acquired them. And Bosch opened up their office downtown Detroit, focused on everything around ride sharing and commuting to work.
What's the process of this sort of this 90-day crunch?
So this 90-day program is really about accelerating a business. We like to think of it in thirds. The first third is finding the direction of your business, so meeting 100 different mentors from around the region, around the world, individuals like Jeff that have that great experience and background, or RJ from like his perspective on the industry, from the journalist side, people like Bill Ford, industry perspectives, but all these different perspectives that help these entrepreneurs really find what direction do they want to take their business in. The next 30 days, how do they go get more revenue, more customers? And then at the end, how do they communicate their business to the world, to their customers, to go fundraise and build?
Hey, Ted, at what stage are the companies, you're calling them companies when they come into the program, are they companies, or is this more an entrepreneur with an idea, maybe a business plan, or maybe even the start of a primordial business? What's typical?
That's a great question. So they all are companies, but technically maybe not. So we look at it, it's early stage startups, early stage companies. So this could be as early as 2 guys and an idea and nothing else. And it could be a team of 20 with a few million in revenue.
Do you have to be accepted in the program?
Yes.
Yeah,
So we see a few hundred applications every year just for 10 spots in the program. So it's really hard to get into. And it doesn't matter the stage of the business or where you're from. It's really, can we help you succeed as an entrepreneur? And one of our most successful companies was 2 guys out of New York City, and they had an idea on a piece of paper. There was no legal entity. They had no money. They had no prototype, nothing. And their idea was, could we take Uber and Lyfts and start to share stuff in those, like kind of build like a mini convenience store where you could get a USB charger, gum, deodorant, or something. And this company, Cargo, ended up coming in our program. We helped form it, helped get them off the ground. And they've now raised over $35 million. Wow. Peter Thiel put in $25 million in the last round. And that was a company that didn't even exist when they came into the program.
And so that's a great credit to the program. I mean, so tell us some of the key things you guys did for that company in the process, specific things that might have been provided by you in the program to really facilitate their growth.
So one of the biggest things that we do to help with growth is facilitating relationships. And companies are not built in a vacuum. They're built through relationships, whether it's
That is so true.
Yeah.
And this week is all about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this whole week is just building that connective tissue around the region. And so one of the key things in the program was they started to develop a really good relationship with Uber. That took 2 years to really translate into the new CEO of Uber pushing it out. But that really cemented their approach, how to work with the rideshare companies. They got a lot of like technical work. I remember working with them on their product, and they were trying to figure out, do we need to build an app? And I said, you don't need to build an app. Just go to your little mobile browser on your phone, and you can do a checkout. You don't need to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars building an app. And that was able to save them a lot of money and just get something out there faster and figure out how do they want to do the transaction. So a lot of it, to your point, Jeff, it was just those relationships.
It's interesting how those little things like that, like you don't need to build an app, they would have gone in a completely different direction, likely, and spent time and money and energy, resources, focus on building that app when, in fact, that simple statement short-cycled what otherwise might have been, not only more time, but maybe even a missed opportunity.
Right, and I think that's a lot of confusion entrepreneurs have is just because someone else has an app or a website or whatever, I need that to be successful. Sometimes you need the complete inverse, and a program like this, you meet so many great individuals with different perspectives. You really start to figure out, what do I really need to be successful?
Mm-hmm. What are some of the key highlights this week that you're seeing now already? We're midweek. Are there things that jumping out to you in terms of either inspiration, education, examples of success, people that are interesting? What's jumping out at you this week?
I think what's great about this week, the first immediate thing is probably just the location. We're in this Lear Innovation Center, downtown Detroit, this gorgeous building right here in Capitol Park. When I moved to Detroit 7-8 years ago, you wouldn't be caught in this area of town. You might not be walking around. And now the hub of entrepreneurship, hundreds and billions of dollars of companies are flourishing right in this area, in this building that used to, I think, was a cigar factory back in the day.
It was, yeah.
And RJ can probably talk more about the history here, but it's just amazing to see kind of this transformation from an old world business to now all these new world technical businesses right here in Detroit. And I think that juxtaposition of the old and the new is really the story of what's going on. And just the tens of thousands of people coming down here this week is amazing to see.
Ted, that 30-day period where you're in that mid-period for the program, you're advising these companies on raising revenue or going out and getting cash. What are some of the tips that you've seen over the last 4 or 5 years that you could share with others?
Yeah, so in terms of like fundraising, the biggest thing we teach entrepreneurs is it's relationship driven. That's kind of really the common thread here. You don't just go to an investor and ask for money. It's a relationship. That investor is looking at building a relationship with you over time. They're taking a lot of risk in giving you capital. It's their money or their other institutional partners' money. And so that's the biggest thing we work on is you really are building a relationship. And that's how we treat our investments in the companies. It's not a transaction where you give them money, you get into the program. This is a long-term relationship. I'm investing in you, not only with this company, but future companies, whether this is successful or not. It's about you being a human and building a business here.
And you guys, obviously, getting back to the kind of benefit you can provide, you've got those relationships all in place, and you know who's looking for what, who has the appetite for what fits where, and you can really, again, just point them in the right direction and make the introduction, which is everything to a young company when time and money and energy and focus is what they have, and in some cases what they need, what they don't have, and you can help fill in those voids and put it all together for them in a way that they can't really do readily on their own most of the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize it. It's almost kind of like we're the Google Maps. We just help you find your direction of your business.
Seriously.
Where are the shortcuts? How do you avoid the traffic? How do you avoid the construction? How do you find those investors, the right ones? And they may not be the obvious direction that you think you need to go in.
Yeah, cool. So I know the first year of the program 4 years ago, there were about 3,800 people that came through. This year, you expect around 15,000, right, roughly?
Yeah, so we see in this program the 10 startups that come here, hundreds of entrepreneurs, but our demo days attract thousands of people every year. And as we look at kind of the demo day of the Techstars Detroit program, as we look at Startup Week, which is bringing...
And that's really what I was referring to, the Startup Week program in particular.
Yeah, and it's another 5,000 to 10,000 individuals. And so this week alone, over 10,000 individuals just with Startup Week. And then when you factor in the Techstars Detroit program and thousands more at Demo Day, it's 15,000 plus people are coming through this ecosystem in Detroit over each year.
Have you set up your demo day yet for this year, that date?
Yeah, so we're still finalizing that. It looks like it's probably going to be October 10th is our demo day this year. And one of the big things, I think that Jeff, you're alluding to, just this huge surge in people and thousands of people. How do we facilitate relationships that way that we actually are going back to the drawing board? How do we construct a more effective demo day? At the end of the day, it's helping these entrepreneurs succeed. And we're actually looking at making our demo day smaller because an event like Detroit Startup Week is becoming so big, 10,000 plus people. This is a much more effective venue for entrepreneurship and people really looking to make connections. And it doesn't last a few hours. It lasts 5 full days. And so we're really looking at leveraging a lot more this week and changing our demo day format.
Hey, Ted, you on a personal level, you came to Detroit, right, from out of town? You're not a Detroiter, born and raised. You came here. You made the choice to come here and be here and obviously establish a life here and a business here and so on, a career. What drove you, and this was in the early days, what, 10 years ago, roughly?
Yeah, about 8 years ago.
8 years ago, right.
Approaching that.
Why did you come, and why are you staying?
So why I came was I was, to be completely honest, I was living in San Francisco. I was
I mean, there you were in the Mecca, for what you're doing now, right there in the heart of it all.
After we sold the last company I co-founded, I was burned out. I didn't realize it, but I was actually burned out. And I grew up in a military family, so every 2 to 3 years we moved somewhere else. So now I'm approaching 3.5 years in San Francisco. The switch in my head is, all right, it's time to move somewhere. And I got engaged, and my wife was from Detroit. And she was like, maybe we could go.
It's all about relationships, right?
Yeah, relationships. She's like, maybe we could go to Detroit. And I said, no. I was like, why would we go to Detroit? I'm an early stage startup entrepreneur. I'm thinking we either stay in San Francisco, maybe New York, Boston, maybe Chicago. But Detroit was like not even on the list. And so honestly, what really got us here was guilt. So 2 months later, I was like, well, let me just make sure like there's actually nothing going on. And so I Googled Detroit startups, and this was about 7-8 years ago. And so Dan Gilbert had just moved downtown, just formed Detroit
Madison
Venture
building,
Partners.
right? With DVP, right?
Yeah, and I was like, well, there's one thing in Detroit that I would actually do. And so I just sent a cold email, and then 2 months later ended up moving out here to try and figure out what the hell am I doing in Detroit from San Francisco. And I was like, well, worst case, can always move. That's my history. Best case, this will probably work out. I had no idea like what I would find. I think what I found was just really this passion for Detroit and really helping to kind of developing my own mission of changing people's perception of Detroit and really entrepreneurs' perception of doing business in Detroit.
You know, I have to tell you, through this event, I've learned one thing that I think has really hit me square about the people involved and why they're here, and the power of community beyond just building a company. There are probably, especially 8 years ago, there were maybe arguably better places to build a company, but now it's about the greater good. There's a broader thing going on here, and people feel good about doing their part because they're not just doing something for themselves, they're part of a community doing it. They're part of that transformation, and that's a really powerful thing to be part of. What an opportunity to not only change your life and the people that may work for your company and the investors in it, but the community at large.
Right, and I think
It's
that's
so fulfilling.
the biggest thing is it gives you that whole new level of meaning for the business you're
Exactly.
building, the people you're doing business with, and I think RJ's book, which I'm excited to read, I think really talks about the history of Detroit and really just the spirit of Detroit's always been around entrepreneurship, and now we're seeing this whole new wave of entrepreneurship as Detroit shifts from kind of manufactured steel to software and services.
And you're part of that story. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You know, I grew up in Flint, came to the Detroit area, and have seen it all, you know, from the worst days now to the best days today. And I'll tell you, you are definitely part of it. You're part of that story. You coming here, each little piece of that puzzle, you coming here from San Francisco, I remember it was highlighted. It was part of the story. Hey, Ted Serbinski came to Detroit to start a venture career here as opposed to staying in San Francisco. What's that about? You know, and that opened people's eyes. And if he came, maybe I should check that out. You know?
Yeah, it's just hearing you say that, I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, you know what? We'll edit that part out.
Yeah.
It's all part of the grand design,
Exactly.
right, Ted?
But I think
you're right on the path.
entrepreneurship is a lot about that. It's just taking a big risk, and that's where you really discover yourself and your mission. And I knew at my core I wanted to build things and help people, and I realized I could actually do that in Detroit.
So cool.
And the other great thing is, you know, it just has studying the history of Detroit. From day one, it's been a maker city, and one of the ultimate maker cities in the world. And I think that's probably tied into your success too, with all these companies that you're assisting.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, and I think there's just something iconic about Detroit. And as we're seeing this rebirth and these entrepreneurs coming here, it's sure you can build your startup San Francisco or New York, but when you say you built it in Detroit, there's just this new meaning to it.
It's
There's just
cool.
something powerful.
It's what?
Yeah.
What? Incredible. But indeed, it's happening. That's for sure. RJ.
Great. We are looking forward to the rest of Detroit Startup Week. And Ted, anything else that you got coming down the pike in terms of Techstars?
Yeah, so we're really excited about the rest of this week. Detroit Startup Week here is going on rest of the day through Friday. Our 90-day Techstars Detroit program will be kicking off in July, ending in October. And so that is a much more of a smaller, intimate program for entrepreneurs, but we're really excited about what's going on in the community at large and looking at new ways, especially as we get into 2020, the Detroit Auto Show moving to June. How can we really help create synergy across the region?
Right on. Right on. Well, we know many more good things are to come. Actually, a lot of people say you guys have come so far. Detroit's come so far. Even though we have, and now it's tangible, it's real, there are real stories to tell, it's just beginning, really. It's just beginning.
Yeah.
Great. Ted, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show. More importantly, thanks for all you've done for the region and for the tech and entrepreneurial community here. Thank you, Ted.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, right on. All right, back with more on Startup Nation. All right, we're back. We're here at Detroit Startup Week. About midweek here, an incredible event, 15,000 people expected or so. We've talked to some incredible people, and keeping that trend rolling, RJ King of DBusiness and Our Media. We've got Lauren Bigelow, Executive Director for Entrepreneurship at Rock Ventures. The term rock and Detroit go hand in glove, I'll tell you that. And Lauren, you've got an important role there. First, tell us about Rock Ventures. Tell us about your role there.
So I head up the entrepreneur team and putting together the strategy. They've been really cranking it for the last 4 years. We just got done with our third Detroit Demo Day last Friday. given out $3.4 million to companies across Detroit, watching them grow, watching them scale, and we're really, really mindful of the impact that that's had between the jobs, the dollars into the local economy. But we're also very excited. We do a number of philanthropic efforts around business support organizations. So we support Build, Prosperous, different organizations that educate and train our
Yeah.
next
So,
generation
so
of
there's a
entrepreneurs.
very general charter, it sounds like, at Rock Ventures, and that is to facilitate, foster, support the local entrepreneurial community in and around Detroit.
Very much so.
Yeah, whether it be financing, making connections, et cetera, right?
Exactly.
And I know entrepreneurs here in this community, frankly, in any community, one of the things they are most interested in is I've got this great idea. I need funding in order to make it go. I need to hire the right people, and I need to do some marketing. I need to support myself as an entrepreneur. I need funding. Can you give us some, maybe some guideposts and tips and suggestions on, specifically in Detroit, what's the playing field like there, really in terms of angels and venture, and then maybe some specific players in that ecosystem?
Certainly, that sounds great. So depending upon what type of business that you're going to start, so you're either going to have your neighborhood small business, you want to do your jam business, you have some type of, you're going to be technical in that you're going to help people gin up their computers at home, things like that. So it's something small that can be you,
Sole proprietor,
sole proprietor,
kind of business.
couple of
Yep.
people, or you're going to do a startup, which is going to be either tech focused, something that's really going to expand quickly. So you have to decide sort of what avenue you're going to go. Is it going to be something that's going to have slow growth and be something that can support you and your family, or is it something that you're literally looking to employ hundreds of thousands, or thousands of people? So once you've decided that path, so should you take the neighborhood entrepreneur path, there are a lot of resources available. So if you're a woman entrepreneur, if you're a person of color, if you are within the city limits, if you're regionally, depending upon where you're coming from, you can access different parts of capital. So different programs have different capital access. So Build in particular is associated with Kiva, and Kiva will give zero interest smaller loans that are funded by the community to entrepreneurs. They have very specific payback parameters, but they are zero interest. People who go through Prosperous, which is a program which is within Southwest Solutions, they have their own microloan program. Detroit Development Fund has Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, which can go up to $50,000.
Loans again?
Loans again. These are all
and
loans.
these loans, if you're an entrepreneur out there thinking about it and you want to establish a business in a Main Street location and serve the local community, maybe it's a sole proprietorship, maybe you hire one or two people, as you said, those are businesses probably better suited for looking for a loan as opposed to angel. It could be angel, but certainly not venture capital. Venture capital tends to target that fast growth, high growth business that you referenced earlier.
Exactly. And so if you're going for the highly scalable business, you're going to start with a thing called friends and family, which depending upon your network, you may or may not have. There are people who in friends and family can raise $100,000 to $250,000 relatively quickly. There are smaller funds across southeastern Michigan. There's a thing called the Business Engagement Fund, which runs through Techtown and Ann Arbor Spark, where you don't get the money directly for your company, but you were talking before, you need legal help, you need marketing help. What that does is it pays for the consultants to help you gin up your business. And so there are those funds that are, again, they're grants. So
there's loans and there's grants, and grants are, you don't have to pay them back.
don't have to pay them back. And particularly if you're doing a high growth business, they call that non-dilutive capital because it doesn't decrease the amount of equity that you have in your own company.
Right.
So one of the other programs that was across the city was a thing called Any Ideas, and that was, again, a grant program for $10,000 or $100,000. Once you get past that friends and family and you're moving up, a lot of times you'll reach out into the angel community. And there are people who will paint the angel community as, kind of monochromatic, but the reality is you're dealing with individual people. And so you really have to look at somebody's money that they're going to be bringing into your business and what they bring along with it.
That is so true. Angel money, it's termed angel because, first of all, it tends to be more friendly, more patient. Now, it is dollars for equity, so you are typically selling some of your company, some of your equity in exchange for the capital provided that's invested into the company. But it tends to be, if you do it right and you find the right angel investor, friendly, patient, smart, brings added value. It's not just about the dollar, it's about the dollar plus the connections and all the other things
Exactly.
that angels can do for you.
Yep, it's the connections, it's the, it's the strategic help, it's the mentorship. It's typically somebody who's 10 to 20 years older than you, who has been in the business world, who really understands the struggle that you're going to bring to the table. They understand working with employees. They might have dealt with challenges in their own business that you're seeing, and they can really help you navigate that
Yes.
first level of your business.
What are some of the tips, Lauren, for working with, or at first approaching those potential investors and then building that relationship?
Well, part of it is, and this is really tough to do because when you've got the idea in your head, you're really jumping forward and you want to put the business plan together, but just developing those relationships, developing that trust, creating a business plan that's got milestones in it. So when you're communicating to a set of angel investors, so in something like Detroit Startup Week, you meet a lot of people, you get a lot of cards. First thing, follow up immediately. Put a coffee on the calendar, even if it's a month or 2 months out, because their schedule is crazy.
Out of sight, out of mind. You don't want them to forget where you met,
Totally.
that conversation that you the shake of the hands, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so you wanna get on their radar and just have a conversation, because anybody having money in your business, having equity in your business, it's like a marriage. It's a serious relationship.
It is. I'll tell you, a lot of people say, well, how do I find angel investors in plural? Because you typically need more than one. Angels tend to invest 50 or 100 or, money in that kind of range. Of course, there's all kinds of things on the margin, but that seems to be a sweet spot. To find angels in plural, I think the best thing you can do is find one champion angel to start with, because angels tend to run in circles with other angels, right? And if they get hot on a deal and they're excited about it and they like it, they're going to help make introductions for you. So getting that first domino to fall, that first angel to believe in you and to be willing to make a financial commitment to you, that's how you find angels in plural.
Yeah, and there's angel groups out there. There's the Michigan Angel Fund for women-led businesses. There's Bell Capital, or Bell Michigan. And across the state, we have Great Lakes Angels, Grand Angels, Blue Water Angels, Northern Michigan Angels. So those are the groups. There's actually one out of Lansing called Capital Angels. Those are the groups that you go to, and they have very specific processes that are on their website where you can upload your business plan. But understanding who those individuals in those groups are and getting a champion, like you were saying, Jeff,
Right.
is really critical.
Right, it is. It is. And angel money is really great for the earliest stages. Because again, now we talked about angel money and venture. We talked about friends and family, then angel money, then venture capital. Venture capital is institutional. The guys or ladies managing that money have an objective of generating a return to the investors who put their money into that fund. Those are some serious pressures on them, and they may be aligned with where you need to go, or and so on. And in some cases, they may not. So that's later stage growth capital, closer to the exit event, the sale of the company. So first angel, then venture, right?
Definitely. But the one key piece to understand when you talk about institutional part of venture capital is that people need to understand that the venture capitalists have raised this money from very large pension funds, and in the institutional capital you were talking about, they've got to create a return within a specific time period. So if somebody has just raised their fund and they're in year 1 to 3, then they have a lot more capital to play with. They are more interested in looking at hot deals. If they're in years 7 through 10, basically they're just curating
Yes.
their portfolio
They're
of
managing the
companies,
portfolio.
and
Yeah.
they're not putting out any capital. So understanding for two pieces around later stage startups, understand who you're pitching and what the rest of their portfolio looks like, so that you can either fit in with it, you're not wasting their time or yours.
Right, I like that advice. That's really good. Not only understanding what they typically like to invest in by looking at their portfolio, but also looking at what stage they are in relative to the evolution, the trajectory of their fund, the lifespan of their fund, because what they're looking for may change the later you go, right? And then you got to be aware of that. You got to make sure you're in alignment. And once you bring investors in, you talk about it as a marriage. Boy, you, it's a it's a marriage and then some. It's a business marriage for sure. You are in together, and you better make sure you understand each other, where you're going, be in sync, have all those objectives and hopes aligned, expectations aligned.
Yeah, and you have to have somebody who's supportive of you. So if something slips, a milestone doesn't get hit, or
And they're going to.
yeah,
That's a
they're
given.
and they're
Oh, yeah.
going to. And those are the people who are out there helping you raise your next round, so capital. Those are the people who are your biggest cheerleaders. They're the ones who are, making the introductions into the large corporates that you need to have as customers. I mean, those are the people who are pulling on their network, and that's exactly why you want venture capital in your company if you want to scale quickly.
Right, if you want to scale quickly.
And Lauren, let's look at it from the other side. A startup's coming in, starting to grow their business, and I see this tripped up every once in a while with these companies where they make the mistake of trying to do the books themselves, and they don't bring in the professionals, and it really limits their potential. But what tips would you say from the start out that on that bookkeeping side that you could provide?
There's a small nonprofit here called the Accounting Aid Society who helps a lot of small businesses. I would definitely work with the SBDC, which is another free resource, Small Business Development Centers. But if you don't have your finances together from not necessarily day one, but maybe day 30 of your business, you're creating an architecture that's going to fail. And so if you have got, there was a M&A that I knew about 5 years ago, that a guy was running a $7 million business out of a checkbook. And the bankers that were going to sell the business had to come back in and reconstruct 12 years of financials. And I mean, this guy was meticulous, so it was doable, but it was painful. And so, but the thing is, when somebody's going to put investment dollars in, if your books don't look right, they're not going to loan you any money. They're not going to put any money in your company until your financials
That
are
is
right.
for sure. Financials and your all your legal structure and documents, agreements, and so on. That stuff, it's a great point, RJ. That stuff's got to be
Locked
buttoned
down.
up, locked
Yep.
down.
Particularly if you've got partners, understanding where the equity is. If you've got a scalable company, a lot of investors on the venture side are looking for intellectual property. So making sure those are all locked and loaded are critical.
Great, thank you.
RJ, you've seen a lot of change in the venture community here, obviously. What do you see kind of in terms of in the venture activity here today, the angel groups, the venture capital funds? I mean, this is a changing environment. 10 years ago, we had a few little funds here and there, Ann Arbor here, Detroit, little bit, but now, I mean, it's active. They're collaborating. They're in some cases competing. But I tend to get a sense that money is now starting to chase the deals as opposed to deals constantly chasing the money, which is a great problem to have in this area here.
Well, if you go back 10 years ago, that buy local really was huge in the produce side of the business, or just all the industries here. And now these private equity firms, angels, the venture capitals, the friends and family, they're all looking to buy local or invest local, if you will. And I think instead of chasing these deals in New York or LA or Silicon Valley, they're like, well, let's nurture the ecosystem that's here and grow it. And Lauren, I think you're probably right there at the front seat of that.
Yeah, I see a lot more risk tolerance with people who have disposable capital. A lot of the doctors and lawyers and professional folks are like, wow, you're in the startup ecosystem. Are there opportunities that we have there? And it's great because, I have a brother who's a doctor, and I don't understand, biotech and med devices are not my wheelhouse. But I'll bring him in on deals, and he can talk to the MD PhDs who are spitting out the technology, and then he can do the due diligence as opposed to me looking at it. But I look at the tolerance of folks in the kind of 40s and 50s generation who their kids are now out of school and they've got disposable capital. They're interested in backing local businesses. There were a lot of folks that we saw at Detroit Demo Day following up with the companies and seeing where they can put good dollars into local companies.
Success really breeds success. I mean, and I think that's part of the the culture here that's changing. We didn't have a venture capital culture here. We didn't have a tech company culture, even though the automotive companies were tech companies. But now we do. We really do now.
Well, I got to tell you, I really want to know how he did the whole deal cash. But Doug Song and John Oberheide, like the sale of Duo and the millionaires that it spread across, southeastern Michigan, like couldn't have happened to a greater group of folks. I mean, like dedicated to Michigan, really committed to the space, incredibly bright. And,
Their timing was impeccable too.
their
The
timing was
exit.
impeccable. And they're spinning off companies. Census, which is run by Brian Kelly, is a spinoff from, they were looking around for a technology, but he was working with Doug for years. And so now we've got a company that's been funded to, it's like 2 or 3 million, I don't remember the exact number, but they're burgeoning in Ann Arbor. So you see this growth from like the tendrils of successful entrepreneurial companies. And those people then, they understand the value of a growing tech company and how your money can expand oh so quickly.
Sure.
So
The learning that comes with it, the inspiration that comes with it, the confidence that
the
comes
confidence,
with it.
yeah. And part of the thing about risk capital is understanding that you can take 2 or 3% of your portfolio.
Exactly.
And, true, there are times that I've never totally lost money on an angel deal. I have one that's recent out of LA that I'm probably doing 60 cents on the dollar. But I also have one that's recently has signed a term sheet, which in 18 months will have given me a 7X on paper. And so
RJ, we need to get some tips.
Yeah, that's a good one.
so exactly. And it was funny because it was just somebody that I knew. The space was out of my wheelhouse, but I knew that the founder of this company, he's generational.
Well,
Like, he's worked
founders,
really-
that's a critical thing, right? I mean, you look at your little checklist, and founders, founders right at the top of it. Vision's important, good ideas important, all of that stuff is important, but the founding team, the executives who are going to lead the company, that's where the heart of the action is.
Yeah, their vision, their work ethic, like knowing that this is a person that, the money that I put in, like even if it ended up just being something that created a business for, his wife and kids, at some point over the next years, like I would get the money back. Because, when we first, a lot of angels, rather than doing, because you can't price a very early round, will do debt that then converts to equity
Sure,
as the company
convertible note,
grows.
yeah.
And so, we did that, but I knew that, sometime over the next 20 years, I'd get paid back. I wasn't that stressed, but now,
Well,
we found out
you're an
7X.
angel.
I'm
Yeah.
an
You're
angel.
an angel after all.
I'm an angel.
Patient
No,
money.
I know. I have 17 companies in my portfolio, and so it's an exciting thing. It's funny because I teach at U of M Ross, and I will talk about different investments, but I am one of the 3 owners of a Cuban burger joint in Ann Arbor called Frito Petitos. And for most of my students, that's like my biggest claim to fame.
Oh, of course.
I
mean,
that,
Depends on how you measure success, right?
yeah, exactly. And knock on wood, we're going to be opening in Little Caesars headquarters.
That's
As soon
really
as the
fun.
Oh,
street
that'll be
opens.
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're excited. Looking
Good for
forward to
you.
doing it.
You're a mover and a shaker. I mean, here we are talking about Rock Ventures, but your own portfolio, 17 companies you've invested in.
Yeah, it's
I
great
mean, that's
fun.
really cool.
Everything
really
from
cool.
Cuban burger joints to
Wa-
satellite engines.
Walking
so.
the walk and talking the talk, no doubt about it. Well, amazing. Anything you want to share with us about the week here and things you've seen and experienced, how you feel about this event and as a kind of a gem of the Detroit community coming together?
I think this is fantastic. It's so exciting just, watching the people who, I moderated a paddle session on Monday with a bunch of our former demo day winners, and the questions from the crowd, the clarity of thought, the really nailing down the entrepreneurs on how they did something, the network that's here, the diversity of people that are here in terms of age and race and
Everything,
and gender.
across the
Yeah,
board.
it's across the board, and that's great to see because, Jeff, you and I have known each other a long time, and it was a whole bunch of white men when I started in this in 2000. And there were literally like 3 or 4 women at the first events that I was running in entrepreneurship at the IT Zone back then. And so seeing the community within Detroit and watching small business get engaged and watching like people take that risk of walking up to somebody else and saying, gosh, I'd really the barriers are being broken down, and
For
then
sure.
also kind of the the risk tolerance of the millennial generation,
Yep.
I think is fantastic.
Well, Lauren, while you're taking a sip of coffee there, do you need cream or sugar?
I'm good.
You good? Okay. While you're taking a quick break, I have to tell you, again, we're continuing to meet great people, people who are contributing to the community, people who are passionate about the community, people who are investing in the community. You're doing all those things, Lauren. And, like you said, you were there then, you're here now. It's a good time to be in the region, isn't it?
Well, one of the great things also, so, having just started with Rock in January, we're looking to sit down with Detroit Startup Week, with Tech 360 from Ann Arbor Spark, with our Detroit Demo Day, and coordinate all of this for 2020. Because we've got the North American International Auto Show coming in next June. So we really want to
exciting.
put Michigan on the map. Not kind of Detroit versus Ann Arbor. That is a really old and tired trope.
It really is. Or Detroit in the suburbs.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
It's a region.
Yeah, we're a region, and Detroit is the heart of it, and we have
It is.
different assets in Ann Arbor than we do in Detroit, but the symbiosis between the two of them and the synergies that we
Absolutely.
can cook are just, I think, off the charts.
Well said.
I'd give you a little tip on that. That first week of Auto Show, it'll be 2 weeks next year in June. That second week is really wide open for programming. And that first week will be, it's all the media and all that stuff and charity preview. But that second week, that's where the opportunities are, I think, for you.
Yeah, that's going to be meaty and fun, and and the thing that's great too is I ran Accelerate Michigan for the first 6 years of the program, developed it with Mike Finney from Ann Arbor Spark and Dave Egner, and just the opportunity to bring in investors from all across the country. We've got Woodward Angels that's been spun up through
Right.
Brand new here.
through Rock Ventures, and so bringing that platform of the investment community that's through sports management. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know, but like Nas, the musician, has a venture fund. Serena Williams has a venture fund.
It's cool to have a venture fund or investment arm these days. All the celebrities are investing these days.
And bringing them into Detroit, I mean, I think there can be no better use of our time to like have an amazing panel of, sports and entertainment professionals who are looking to invest, and they're looking to invest in entrepreneurs of color. They're looking to,
Of course.
looking to invest in women. They're looking to change that balance out and really prove out some of these companies'
Yep.
theses.
Well, speaking of good use of time, this was a great use of time. Thank you, Lauren,
Thanks.
for
It's
being
great
on.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
All right. Back with more on Startup Nation from Detroit Startup Week. Okay, welcome back to our live stream on Startup Nation from Detroit Startup Week. RJ King, pleasure having you here and bringing your insight, your experience, knowledge of the region.
It's been a great week, and we've got a great guest right now.
We definitely do. Now listen, RJ, we've been talking a lot to people with dreams, people who want to make things happen, people who have a vision. But now we get an opportunity to speak with a gentleman who has proven it, who's done it, and we want to hear the story. We want to hear the essence of how you have been such an incredible success over and over again. Raj Vadakudi from Altimetrics, you're the CEO, founder. Amazing. You have a great story, and we're thrilled to have you on.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to Detroit because in 1974, I came as a student at Wayne State, and so that has given me all this career and opportunities, and so I'm very grateful to Detroit.
That's interesting. That's a different kind of take on to talk about Detroit. He's grateful to Detroit for being here and giving you the opportunity. That's wonderful.
My first company I started in the Buell building. And so then slowly then we moved to the Farmington Hills later on. But this is where my whole career started.
Well, talk about what you're working on today in terms of your company and where you're going.
Yeah, the Altimetric is mainly focused on digital transformation. And my previous company, which was public and we sold in 2007, was very much focused on the IT and helping various industries, automotive, retail, financial services, healthcare. But this one is mainly focused on the business transformation. And really, IT has become more people-oriented, whereas this particular company mainly focused on the automation, data, digital transformation. And so many, many years, the business have been starving about the innovation. So really we focused on how we bring the innovation quickly, the ideas, especially today in the automotive world. This all the autonomous cars, mobility, and all kinds of new models are coming. Eventually the whole automotive world is going to change from the dealership to the more fleet management aspects of the services they will provide. So how quickly we can bring these ideas together to the market. So that's what we're helping Ford Motor Company and the Daimler. And similarly, we're working in the financial services for major payment companies like PayPal, Visa, and also MasterCard. And the retail, CVS help them. So generally, it's very much focused on what required for the business to transform with the new ideas and how do we make sure we productize that and take to the market.
Raj, you're grateful to Detroit. What brought you here in 1974?
Mainly for education.
For education, came to Wayne State. That was why you came.
Yeah, that's why I came.
Yeah. And what has Detroit? Again, you're grateful to Detroit for Detroit. Tell us about why you feel that way. What has Detroit done for you to facilitate and foster your dreams?
Yeah, I think it's the education. So I had a scholarship that was grateful to Wayne State, and then I started my career in the automotive. And then I saw the opportunity in the technology, in the industry desperately need the different way of doing technology. And saw the opportunity and started the company with 5 employees. And first 10 years took nothing but the troubled projects from Accenture and Lockheed, IBM. So proven that you can do it in a different way and then really provide the value to the customers. And the company grew from there and then grew into close to 9,000 employees, went public in 97 on NASDAQ. So it's all at each stage kind of build up the company and provide the value to the customers. That always has been the industry and the customers focus really helped us to differentiate in the market.
And here you are chasing another dream.
Yeah.
Getting up every morning, going to work, pursuing that dream now of making this current company a success. Well, what is that about an entrepreneur you've had enough success in your life, unless you haven't by your own definition, but by most people's standards, you certainly have. What's driving you?
I think it's always what really we can contribute to the industry and what we can contribute to the community is always drives me very much. So the way these millennials have brought some great things in terms of the whole business model changing to more in terms of the flexibility and frictionless,
Yes.
and then simple business models. And that really drives me every day because I'm involved with several industries at the CEO's level, thinking about how to do their business transformation, how to leverage their strengths. And so that's what drives me every day to really go after this business.
It's amazing, but entrepreneurs, RJ, when you ask that question, it's really it's always interesting getting an answer, but it's really about, it's in your DNA.
Yeah.
It's who you are. It's just who you are, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it or have it any other way.
Yeah. If I say I'm 20 years old, I will start 10 other businesses.
Right, I was going to
There's so
say,
much
I
opportunity.
have a feeling you're just getting started.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Amazing. So, RJ, you're about
Oh,
to jump on a question.
Raj, I was curious. You had mentioned that you're working with your clients on speeding up that innovation for them, and a lot of what you said had to do with the future of ground vehicles as it relates to autonomy and mobility. But soon, we're at the beginning of this aerial transformation of autonomy, and that these ground vehicles we're going to have to communicate with these aerial vehicles, and some will be picked up and things. And what do you see in that space, this sort of aerial mobility space?
I think in generally it's going to be all, as I said again, simplicity and convenience, and based on that, today is all about the data and the information, very well connected, literally, and so based on that, I think this is where a lot of business models emerge, and a lot of new entrepreneurs will start providing these type of services in a big way, both the technology perspective, but also actual business models are much more simplistic. And as far as I see, with the 5-6 years from now, not everybody don't want to buy the car; they want the car as a service. And there's a lot of fleet management companies, entrepreneurs will come provide that kind of service. And so, like that, it'll start. The enterprises, their sales and marketing people will be connected in real time, so they can make the deals and the decisions much faster than they're doing today.
The data will set you free, right?
Yeah. So data is everything.
Data is everything, right? Well, there's a lot of young people here attending Detroit Startup Week to meet other people, make connections, make strategic partnerships, meet an investor, maybe learn from the educational opportunities here. But whether specifically or just as part of just being here, getting inspiration from a guy like you who's done it, you know that you sit in a spot where other people say, I want to have the kind of success you had. I want to achieve what you achieved. And those examples of success, those people who have done it, really give confidence and inspiration, encouragement to the other entrepreneurs that are here. That's got to feel really good. You've achieved not only for yourself, but for the greater good of the community.
Yeah. I advise a lot of startups, including I invested in several startups myself, and they've been very successful. I mean, they're all great ideas. Everything starts. Many times they need some maturity and advice,
Of course.
which is where that I help them a lot, and then they've been able to monetize that. The only thing is, I always tell the entrepreneurs, startups, don't think about the valuation of your company. Focus on what the customer needs, what the industry needs, and what differentiation you have. The valuation will come automatically.
Let me break that down. You say don't think about the valuation of your company. Are you talking about as that relates to taking in investment and negotiating over a few points here or there? That's not the focus, is what
No.
you're saying.
No.
The focus is get the resources together you need, focus on solving the problem the best possible way, creating a great business,
Yeah.
and there'll be lots to go around if you do that, right?
Exactly. That's why I did my company, mainly focused on that. I never knew this will be such a big company and the valuation and all, but it came automatically behind that.
How do you make that switch from, with a new company, a new venture, a new organization? It's you got to go out on the road and like sell, and then when people get it, you're almost like the gatekeeper then.
Yeah.
And how do you make that transformation?
Yeah, I think it's initially, especially this digital transformation, the concepts are so new, so different, especially for the big company enterprise. Very difficult for them to see how to see through this. So that's why I had to spend a lot of time. Like I just came 1 month trip, Japan, Germany, Europe, and overall in India. So the clients, brand new clients, and they were really looking for the CEO level, the transformation. So we had to educate them, see how we can help them, how we do it, making sure we convince them the right solution we provide. And based on that, then, as you said, as we building this customer base, now we built within the last 5 years a lot of customer base here, very, very strategic customers, and including startups. So we're helping a lot of startups with idea, quickly take them to the market. We didn't even invest, but just helping them to go to market. So these are the kind of things. Then we bring our people, strong technology, business-oriented people together. They constantly marching towards so that we're making sure I mentor them and help them to make sure that we scale up the company.
Great.
Are you getting do you feel the change in Detroit? 4 years ago, there were, I think someone mentioned, 3,800 people attending Detroit Startup Week. This week, nearly 15,000. I mean, there's and we could give example after example of things that are representative of the change here in the region. But do you see it? Do you feel it? And what do you see?
Oh, unbelievable. It is, for me, I could never imagine Detroit will be like this. Never, never. And it's really not only very soothing, and I feel it's so great. This is finally Detroit. It has such a great creative talent in Detroit, as you know, many in not only music and many areas. In the West Manufacturing Belt used to be, and a lot of things.
Engineering, so on.
And the engineering, a lot of technology, and finally the world starts seeing this, and it's really building up. We can clearly see all the San Francisco companies are coming here,
Isn't
not
that
us going there.
incredible?
Yeah,
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
The bridge is just getting bigger.
Yeah.
It's almost like be careful what you wish for, right? I mean, we say, well, let's just make Detroit better.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we make it better. We put it at the head of the class.
Yeah, we have great restaurants, great things.
Great
happening here.
lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it's all about. We know you're on a time limit. Are you on your way to a keynote right now, or at
Yeah,
least
the
a panel?
panel, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Well, good. Well, we thank you for giving us some time
Yeah.
on the air here
Thank you.
and on
Thank
the live
you
stream.
for bringing me to this, and then really looking forward, whatever I can contribute to Detroit and make it big. Yeah.
Well, I think you're doing it. I asked you a question a few minutes ago. I just want to go back to it and underscore it. I asked about your presence in the community and whether you really realize what it means for you to be here in the community. And your answer was, I invested in a few companies. I'm not even talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about your success story, your commitment, your dedication here, the fact that you built one company, it was a success, you left that as a legacy, and then you went right back at it again and are doing it again. That's inspirational for
Sure is.
So one of the great thing which I have really, it's not actually related to the business, but it's related more to philanthropy, because when we went public, I really wanted to give back to the community big time. So I gave money for the cancer research for prostate and breast cancer, prostate for the Henry Ford, and breast cancer for Beaumont. But we picked the right approach to leveraging the technology. So prostate cancer, we're the first one in the world using a Da Vinci robot to do the surgery.
Well, my father would be happy. He's a retired urologist.
Yeah, so now it's a world standard. So the innovation started here in Detroit.
There you go.
So
See, I mean,
it's,
giving back to the community.
and it's the best investment I ever done.
And listen to that.
Yeah,
It's the best investment you ever did.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you
Thank
again.
you. One of
Thank
our
you.
best investments, RJ, was having Raj on their little live stream here, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, back with more on Startup Nation from Detroit Startup Week. Okay, we're streaming live, RJ King.
Yeah, beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? That's a beautiful thing. We're here at Detroit Startup Week, and we've got a really amazing guest. I've had an experience to interface a little bit with Monica Wheat and get to know her. Now, there's all kinds of titles and all kinds of ways we could describe who you are, but I'm going to use what you said. I love this stuff. And that is you.
Yes.
You love this stuff. And then RJ was asking you, what kind of subject matter are you proficient in, specifically, so that we could hone in on that and focus on it. And I can tell you, you can cover the ground. You've got it covered. Formally, you're managing director at Venture Catalyst and Backstage Detroit. Why don't you first tell us about those organizations, and then I want to learn about your background.
Okay. So Venture Catalyst is an ecosystem development group. We founded it officially in 2018, unofficially in 2016. And so we partner on large-scale ecosystem development initiatives. So we brought Afrotech here for the first time out of San Francisco. We've run Startup Week for the last 4 years since its inception. We do a global pre-accelerator, which is Startup Boost. We do founders dinners. We have a couple of fun. Like, we have a little bit of everything.
So how is it that you got into all of this and got such a where did all this catch fire for you, and how?
I actually started my career as an engineer. Thought I was going to be a formal engineer for many, many years. Was working for General Motors overseas, and my job was in corporate engineering. And I got
Where
to
were you?
We were in Shanghai.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay,
it
that's
was
cool.
corporate engineering. It was
Yeah.
like all formal. But when we were doing that, one of the things that I worked on was we got to figure out people who wanted to do really cool partnerships with GM, Ford, and Chrysler. I was also worked for them on agency side as well. And these were startups, and these were innovative companies that were coming in, and they wanted to be, they wanted GM as their partner, and we would try to have to assess and see if it was a good fit. And so when I'm looking across the table at these guys that we're assessing, I'm like, they're having fun.
I want to be them, right?
I want to go do what they
I want to
do.
do what they do, of course,
And
right?
it just it kind of blossomed from there. At one of the downturns in GM's past, I had an opportunity to come on the other side and jumped for it, and I've kind of been on this side ever since.
And so, when you say you're on the other side now, you are. Are you yourself an entrepreneur? Are you pursuing a company of your own right now, in addition to all the other things you're doing in your spare time?
In my
spare
spare
time, are
Yeah,
you-
identify as an ecosystem developer, as a strategist, but we've also had several ventures that we've worked on. We've launched several. I also run a nonprofit that teaches kids to code. So anything that's on this side that is about starting something from scratch and building it and connecting partnerships and getting funding and those kind of things, that's what I consider this side.
this side.
Yeah.
And you came back. When was it when you came back from Shanghai to the Detroit area?
Oh, that was a long time ago. 2004 or 5, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So, and the point I wanted to make there is that you really have now, being on both sides and being in Detroit before and now,
Yeah.
it's a wow, right? I mean, this is really cool. I mean, it's one thing to love this stuff and be doing it at a time when the environment around you wasn't really that conducive to it. Sure is fun to do it when it is. I mean, all kinds of resources, all kinds of action, all kinds
crazy.
of activity, right?
It's crazy.
There's
It's
lots
been
of ways to plug in.
It's been a crazy ride to watch Woodward Avenue develop from where it was. When I was working in the Renaissance Center, like many, many years ago, none of this existed. I always tell people, like, we would go for lunch and like there was like 2 options. You could get like
Coney dogs.
Right,
Coney Island,
right.
and like there
That's
was a
funny.
Chinese place or
Right.
something. There was like pretty much it. There was some. We had a food court in the basement of the Renaissance Center, but like outside of it, it was just this
Yes,
whole different
yes.
city.
Yeah.
And to have watched it and to like walk down the street and see different places where I was at the competition when they got their seed money. I was there when they got their
Right.
like all those kind of. This is amazing.
It's
to watch
amazing.
and be in the midst of all of this.
Right.
It's been
And
a
to be
really
contributing to it.
I have fun with. I have fun with this.
So what are some of the things that you're most proud of? Like what do you have going on that, you can point to and say, that's cool and that's cool. Now, listen, we've only got about a half hour.
Okay, I was
with
like,
you.
so.
Let me-
So Startup Week is something I'm super proud of. It's something that I work with an amazing group of people on, and we are a very close-knit group of entrepreneurs and innovators who have put in the time. We're all volunteers who put together Startup Week. So I point to that all the time as something I'm super proud of. Most recently, one of our larger partnerships that we were able to help seed in Detroit was Backstage Capital, an accelerator that's investing $100,000 each into companies that are funded by what we call underestimated founders.
And I will
And
tell
that's
you, I
huge.
hear that about Backstage and what you're doing a lot. It gets repeated a lot. I mean, it's
Awesome.
people are very aware of it and proud of it and focused on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that is key. Like, we are a majority minority city, and it is one of those wide chasms that happens in the funding cycle that women, female founders, as well as people of color who are founders, just don't get that access to capital. And so these companies that we're working on, most of them had 6 and 7 figures in revenue all on their own, but they just didn't have access to like grow and scale to the next level. And they already had like major national distribution partnerships and all these different things, but they needed that access, and they were basically cut off from a lot of the things that I know as being part of Techstars and some of these other places, but founders in general and founders of color who are underrepresented typically just didn't have that access. So to be a part of that and be a part of something that is focused on that has been super
Helping them cross that chasm
100%.
to success, yeah.
Monica, if you could look at back at, with your days at General Motors, I don't think there was ever a thing there called GM Ventures, and today it's like one of the biggest things going there at General Motors. And then Ford on their side, Ford Smart Mobility, that wasn't around 3 years ago. Talk a bit about how that evolution's progressed, and where do you see that going in Detroit and the region?
So that's one of the things that I'm super excited about, because I remember, like, I was only briefly formally on the GM formal side, but I remember one of the things that was frustrating to me was years ago. Anything that was new, whether it be a product or an idea or any of those things, it was taking 18 to 24 months just to get it live so that we could test it. And I remember knowing that and learning that, and people are like, "That's just the way it is." And I remember seeing that and going, but to be on the other, like, to see what they've developed in the years past since I've been gone, it's been amazing. And then I think just watching, I obviously have a ton of friends in my circle who are still work in GM, still work in the automotive pure, and to see them now, like, really focusing on turning themselves into technology companies and focusing on making themselves adaptable and focusing on making themselves able to compete and to attract the talent that they couldn't get before. Because that used to be a big thing about, like, what were the programs that we had that we could get the top tier talent to come in, and how could we get them to stay here in Detroit. I went to the University of Michigan when I was in school, and a lot of people automatically or almost always farmed
That's
out,
right.
and they were gone. And it was difficult. It was that thing of, like, how do we get them excited about staying here? And when I see groups like the Ford Mobility team, and I see them with their smart cities and things like that, and I see GM Ventures, and I see, like, some of the internal groups that are going on, it's just excitement all around. Just because that is the future. We are the original city of innovation, and creating that, and to be reclaiming part of that is amazing.
It really is. What I want to hear about you have a nonprofit focused on teaching kids to code.
Yes.
Yeah, what's that called?
That's cool.
Digitality Girls, Digitality Kids. We started in 2011. I think we've had about 7,000 kids thus far, and so we partner with, like, corporate partners, where we'll go in on the weekends focused on the girls, and we'll do stuff with Google and stuff with GM and stuff with different groups. But during Digitality Kids is when we go into the school districts, and then we partner with code.org and some other places to focus on bringing coding into the classroom.
Who established the curriculum?
Me.
Somehow I would imagine that. So you're a coder as well.
I used to be. I do not identify as a coder. I understand it, and I always tell people that, like, I learned computer science really young, and that was one of my first pieces. So I was able to use that and self-teach myself a lot of things, and so I've done that too. I do that with the kids.
And what drives the kids to want to code? Is it I guess it depends on the age, probably. As you get older, you start thinking career, but before that, you're thinking what? Why does a young kid want to code?
I think it's part of the approach on how you teach it to them. I talked about
That's
this a
what I was
lot
driving
in
at,
code
exactly.
in code.org, because when I was taught coding, it was like memorize all these commands,
Right.
things like that, and
Right.
that was difficult to get kids interested in that. But one of the things of working with code.org is that they redesign a whole platform that's focused on, they bring in cartoon characters, and they bring in all these different ways that are different methodologies about teaching coding.
Well, and also too, kids are interfacing with electronics now today in a
100%.
way at a younger and younger age than unlike any time before, and so they can relate to what the coding. There's something tangible there.
Yes.
That they can see. The coding drives that game that you're having such a great time playing.
That's what we talk about
so
a
they
lot.
can
We
relate to it,
Tell them
yeah.
about being makers instead of just users, and so
Yeah,
they
that's
love that.
cool.
Like, you can create
Really
your own
cool.
game, things like that. That's
Really
what
cool.
pulls them in at this point.
Are they? Go ahead, RJ.
Well, software and hardware.
Yes, software and
so much we miss on the hardware side, but and how much also do you provide these children with not only coding experience, but what else is going on in terms of, say, robotics or AI or machine learning?
We've done a couple of things, and actually all of those. We just did a augmented reality class I'm a part of the STEMinista project at Michigan Science Center. We just did an augmented reality one, and we've also done other ones with robotics, and we've also done some with biomed and things like that. Just things that interest me that I can try to figure out a way to make them interesting to kids too, have been pretty successful.
And what's the way that folks could get started in sort of tapping into that curriculum? Like, go to your website or?
Yeah, so digitalitygirls.com. Most of our newer stuff is on Facebook. That's where we update that a lot more frequently. But a lot of the programming that we do is through the STEMinista project with Michigan Science Center. But Venture Catalyst, our team, we also have launched a program at last Startup Week where we trained 5,000 kids in Detroit public schools how to code, which was focused on mobile app design. And we've continued that program where we're doing that again in October. And again, it's just about like
I want to take a
access
class.
points. It's just about access points, just giving them options and making it exciting, making it something that they want to do. And then all of us are, in the venture capital space, and we're in tech and entrepreneurship. So we also talk to the kids and just like let them know like these are options and these are careers, because as they say, you can't be what you can't see. So we try to make sure that they can
That's
see
exactly
it.
right. That is exactly right. The inspiration that comes from that. And you are driven clearly by all this for-profit activity going on, but I love the fact that you're also really clearly driven by the philanthropic side. That's important to you personally,
100%.
obviously.
It's my passion.
Obviously.
I always call it that's my passion project when people
And-
define what things
Right.
are.
So how do you balance those two things? I mean, is going to work for you, and the philanthropy is your, what's your love, your passion, or how do you blend the two?
I think because they're both
They kinda
motivated
go
from the
hand in
same-
hand.
Yeah, they're both
They really
motivated from
do.
the same
They really
spot.
do.
I don't think there's a difference.
In your case.
Well, yeah, for me.
In your case, right.
For me, they both come from the same spot. It's really, especially from an ecosystem development standpoint, it's really about like how do you figure out what are the needs in a specific area and how do you create solutions that will deliver that. It's just reapplying that model in a lot of different ways. And so working with the kids is a passion point of mine. But we do tons of stuff with the adults. We do tons of stuff with people in the venture space who want to be in the venture space. All those different things.
I'm curious about someone like you who gets up in the morning and has all of these different things going on. How do you measure success in your own life? I mean, how do you say, that makes me feel good? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Not necessarily specifically, but I mean, where is there there? Or is there just more tomorrow, more, more?
It's more. It's 100% more. This is how I'm motivated. We talk about that all the time. Like we are super excited about where we're at, especially with Startup Week this year. We're super excited, but I'm already thinking about like next year. I've got this idea. So it's just always just wanting to go to the next level and keep pushing.
What's in this cup here?
I've got more ideas.
Oh my God, you have
No.
more ideas. So, more ideas. Paint us the picture of what you see for Detroit. We've kind of seen now 2003, 4 when you came back, where we are today. You're shaping, in part, the future of this region and the people in it. What do you see? What's going to look into that crystal ball and give us a picture 10 years from now? What does this region look like
10
then?
years.
5 years.
Well, I think definitely one of the things that we talk about a lot with Detroiters is that we are a moonlight city. So there's a ton of people who do work during the daytime and then use that to seed their ideas
On the
night.
side.
And we do that at a rate that is far surpassing many other
interesting.
cities. And so I see that continuing, but I also see one of the things that I talk about a lot is that in 2008 when there was the bankruptcy. When we had that was
That
an
thing.
inflection point. There was an inflection point for people to really start taking risks and think past, what was the older. I'm going to get a pension. I'm going to, this is a path that I can take, and have a good life without having had to go to school. I think at that point, that inflection point happened because GM and Chrysler were rocked. And it rocked how people thought about what stability was.
People
and what
had to
tomorrow was.
think
They
differently.
Had to
The
go out.
same old was not working.
No,
Do we
and-
need any further proof?
No.
Are
They
you
said,
listening to me?
let's try
right?
something different.
Let's try something different.
I think whereas now we're kind of riding the wave of like that people, being comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I think about 5 years from now, I think it'll be more past people being comfortable with like much more wide scale acceptance. Because like even though there's all this activity going on downtown, there are still folks when I speak to them because I live in the suburbs, and when I speak to them, they're like, I don't
Really?
go downtown. I
Yeah,
only go
really?
I only go for
Yeah.
the Tigers game or
Right.
something like that. I'm like, there's so much going on. So I think it's that broader story will be told, and I think it'll be much more will be much more closer to some of the activity levels that are going on the coast, because it won't be this just pocket
Yeah.
of people that are doing things.
So all this is glorious and wonderful and real, absolutely real, but it's also still in the process of transformation.
Yes.
Where are your concerns? Where is it fragile? Where could we fall down if we don't be careful of what?
I think it's important to note that I'm seeing like a ton of activity and a ton of folks in the ecosystem getting opportunity, but I see a lot of people still being cut out. And I think if we don't figure that out, I think the promise of what people think Detroit could be could fall short very quickly. And in a lot of different ways with that is I work with Grand Circus, and we were teaching people, adults, how to have careers in digital and tech. But it's still difficult for people to figure out how to get the funding to take those classes, to be a part of those boot camps, to be a part of like this wave that's going on.
Yeah.
It's difficult for them to do that in the face of working full time and all these other things. So if we aren't careful for that and making sure that those opportunities stay accessible, we're going to be on a whole nother level of not being able to sustain the promise of what everyone's talking about and what everyone's working so hard for.
And how do you think that could be accomplished? Getting that word out to everybody, really.
I think we're well on our way. I look at stuff like Startup Week, where Startup Week is a fully volunteer staffed event, and hundreds of people come together to make this happen. And I think more efforts like that in multiple spaces are needed, and I think the acceptance of them. We can't do this without all of our many sponsors who do this, and I think the more that we're putting up numbers showing people who are impacted and getting access and opportunity, the more that we're able to do that, the more sponsors are able to come in, the more opportunities like that can grow. But I think we need that inherently. We need people to be willing to give first and figure out like what they can contribute to the ecosystem versus what they can get out of all the new stuff that's coming on. I think just going into all these situations with like, okay, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to get this free help on X, but I'm going to provide this free help on Y. I think if we do more of that give and take, I think we'll be in a better spot overall as far as just continuing ecosystem development.
And then maybe perhaps seeing more programming in the neighborhoods of Detroit as well?
Yeah, and that's something that we've been super specific and intentional about with Startup Week for the past few years, is making sure that we have programming that is mirroring what we're doing downtown. This year in particular, we consolidated all of our neighborhood programming to Durfee Innovation Center each evening, starting at 6 o'clock, doing academies and large scale courses and things like that, and then having busing to them from all of our neighborhood partners, so that people, again, can have access to free classes from experts who are teaching them from the very basics of business plan building to digital. Google came in and did their applied digital skills, things like that. Like those kind of efforts take a lot of people coming together to work on it, and being a part of that is like so self-fulfilling, but it's also something that it's a requirement for us to continue to develop as an ecosystem.
For our audience, that's the Durfee Innovation Society, and it's right next to Central High School, and that's right in the center of Detroit.
Yeah. Amazing thing. I want to go back to, you got me hung up on something. No, this is good, because this is all about understanding. When I asked you what you were concerned about, your comment was that a lot of people are still being cut out.
Yes.
The inclusion or the lack of inclusion is a complicated subject, and there's lots of factors. It's complex. You use the term being cut out, though. That's a proactive kind of statement about. So I want to understand, so that we can see. I want to really look deeper.
Yeah.
What are the, what's the essence of the issues? Is it that they're being, well, you tell us. We want to know. We want to understand.
I think one of the things is that most spaces, when you go into a lot of spaces, if you don't see an access point, or you think that it's cut off, and some of that is self-imposed in your head.
Exactly.
And some of that is in your head, but the other part of it is
that's part of culture and the change that we need to, all this.
Where is it located?
Yep.
Can you get there? And then I think part of it is even in the venture capital community and the entrepreneurship community, a lot of the amazing programs are based on connected and who do you know and who are you connected to that you'll get shared to. And if you don't get it shared to you and you find out about it after the fact, then there's no opportunity for you to participate.
Culture, awareness, points of access, relationships. These are things that, are kind of in the ecosystem that need to be changed. Right?
Yeah,
That's
100%.
the right.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's ongoing processes, and we always talk about, there's no simple solution to this.
Of course.
In no way, shape, or form, and especially in a city the size physically of Detroit and the size of the human population that's in Detroit. It's going to be massive, and it's going to take a long time, and it's going to have many layers. And also, what we talk about a lot is me being on the side of having been in corporate and having done these projects for years. There's some level of no matter how hard or what programming that you do, someone's always going to feel like people criticize us all the time for Startup Week and all the other programs that we do, and they're like, you're not doing enough. And there's not going to be one silver bullet that's going to make everyone say yes, this was the effort that touched everyone and did it correctly. There is no correct way to do it. There's just constant effort. That's all I say.
But there is wind in the sails, that's for sure.
Yeah,
there really is, for sure.
It's almost as if it would be like a one-stop shop. I know that's difficult to program on that side of things, but for folks entering a given space that, I don't know if I want to be a recording artist. I don't know if I want to be a coder. I don't know if I want to start my own flower shop. But having that one-stop shop, where they could get, accounting if they need that help, or marketing or whatever it might be, and I think I sense that's what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what we like with Startup Week. Every year we've had free Small Business Legal Academy, and we've had Google come in and help with marketing and business skills, and we've had Chase or Quicken come in and do financial products and things like that. So we try to be that, but again, this is for 1 week.
Sure.
And we
Yeah.
try to get the word out to as many people as possible to come on board and to know that it's free and that it's accessible and that you can learn about a business loan, learn about getting a business model, financial planning, accounting, and all that, and it's good. We try to, as best as possible, get that. And then we've also had follow-on programming as well and pre-programming it again. But for all of those things, there's only so many of us, and there's only
yeah.
so much.
That's
There's
right.
only so many resources that we have access to because all of us also have day jobs as well. So we do our best, and we try, but we try to be a good sounding. That's the majority of the questions that I answer with folks all the time. It's just where do I go from here? Like what do I do next? And I try to connect them to Build Institute and all these different folks and things like that will help.
And you providing that guidance, those connections, the introductions.
Yes.
That's great
It's
stuff.
invaluable.
That's the essence of Startup Week.
It's the essence of Startup Week. And it's the essence of you.
I think so.
I think so too. I know you agree, RJ. Monica,
totally do.
Thanks for all your contributions to the community, and thanks for spending a little time with us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, right on. Back with more. We're gonna go out to a break. Before we do that, gotta recognize the sponsors. Powered by Quicken Loans, Detroit Startup Week is in partnership with Venture Catalyst, and we also want to acknowledge the event sponsors: DBusiness, Siren PR, and Dell. Right on. Thank you. We'll be
Thank
back
you.
with more in a minute. And we're live streaming from Detroit Startup Week. This is Startup Nation. Jeff Sloan with RJ King from DBusiness Our Media.
Great to be here.
Yeah. And we've got a good one here.
Another
Listen,
exciting
anybody
event.
whose company's name is World Famous Company. World Famous Company. The audacity.
The nerve.
The nerve, David Tyerman. Hi. You're a branding guy. You're a marketing guy. You're a strategist consultant, and you've had success in your own right with the company, and now you're helping others do that. First, tell us about your introduction into business and your first big success, and then we'll get to the world famous company in a minute.
I think I have to tell you about my first failure first.
That's good. That's
because
important.
That's fine.
Hey,
So
it's all right.
I'm from England, as you mentioned. I came to the States on vacation and had one of those epiphanies when you sometimes on vacation you think, God, I could live here. And I was with my friend from work, and I said, I hate my life. I love California. I want to start a business. And he said, okay. And I said, no, I am serious.
Where were you?
We were in Santa Barbara, and we were on
That's
a balcony
Beautiful spot to be.
overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun was setting.
That'll get you.
And you look up, and we saw this weird thing. It was a blue sky, because we're from England. And
Yeah.
it's always gray, right?
With a sunset too, Santa Barbara.
And there was a sunset, and there were palm trees. We've never seen palm trees before. So I'm
Right.
like, this is paradise. I'm in. And so we went walking down State Street the next day to think about, well, what kind of business could we do? And we spotted back in those days, there were loads of antique stores. And my uncle was an auctioneer. He had his own auction house selling antiques. And I thought, well, I could probably do this. And I saw the prices in the windows, and I thought, wow, that's a good price. And I never even thought that that's not the price they get. I never thought about rent. I didn't
Details.
do any planning, except we created a plan to bring some antique vintage things to the States. And our big idea was to sell them via house parties, like Tupperware parties, but for antiques.
Yeah.
And so we sold everything we had in England, including my railway set. We raised
You were in.
We raised a lot of money, $10,000.
Okay.
We spent $5,000 on inventory, and we had $5,000 to live on.
Who'd you raise it from?
Selling all our stuff?
Oh, I see. You sold the
Yeah.
stuff in order to raise money. Got it.
$10,000.
Got it.
That's the big
Okay.
amount I'm talking
Okay.
about. So we started doing our parties, and within 6 months we were down to our last 20. Because nobody bought anything. They drank the wine, they ate the cheese, they looked at the price tags, and they were like, oh, I think I left the iron on. And off they would go. So we went down to our last 20. And we decided, we sat staring at that $20 bill on the coffee table, and we had something worse than bad credit. We had no credit.
Yeah.
No credit cards, no friendly bank manager, no overdraft. So that 20 was it. And after a while, it was a Tuesday, we lived in Huntington Beach, and we were like, I said, do you have any ideas? He said, no, do you?
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat
Yeah.
right now. What do
So-
you do when you get to $20 left?
Well, we just were
Literally at
talking
20.
about this. If you notice in the picture, I'm holding a glass of wine. I said, hey, you know what? There's that bar on Main Street. They sell all the beer you can drink for $7, all the nachos and cheese you can eat for $2.99. Let's go out. What are we going to do?
Eat and drink.
So we went out. And then that evening kind of changed my life. And I'll shorten the story because I know we don't have much time. But we ended up being driven home in a limousine by this guy we got talking to. And his words were, listen, you only fail if you quit. So you're broke. Who cares? Don't quit. And the next morning, I remember waking up. And that was the day I was dreading it. I was so afraid of waking up penniless.
Right.
But actually, I was relieved. I actually was like, oh, it's finally here, and I'm alive.
I'm still okay.
I've got
I can
two
do this.
eyes, 2 ears. I've got legs.
And I'm getting up and I'm going to
And-
go at my day.
And
right?
because no one bought our stuff, we actually still had inventory in the garage. So it wasn't like I had nothing. I just had no money. And we went walking to South Coast Plaza. It's a huge shopping mall in Southern California. And we noticed that stores like Nike and Guess, Banana Republic in those days were using the type of things we had in our garage in their displays.
in displays, right.
So we got busy walking into those stores and being walked out of a lot of them, saying no what's listing, but some people were helpful. And so I'm just going to cut a long story short. You've been into a Ralph Lauren store, right?
Of course.
So when you see the old suitcases and trunks and the dumbbells and the trophies, mountain bike, skis, all the things that tell their brand story, we ended up morphing our business into a visual branding company. We renamed ourselves Propaganda because we were using props to tell stories.
Oh, that's great.
And we ended up supplying every single Ralph Lauren store on the planet. So if you, even today, I sold the company in 2000. But even today, if you walk into any Ralph Lauren store and you see those props, they're the ones that we sold them. And so we did North America, Japan, Europe. We did every Nike store, every Tommy Hilfiger store. And we reached this level of success. We ended up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Wow, it's a good place to be.
And it, not because we got tons of media, thousands of newspapers, magazines, TV shows, not because of just the fact that we were successful, but for how we built our brand. We did some really kind of wacky, crazy branding that stopped people from just being asleep at the wheel. We managed
You got
to,
noticed. You have
we
to
got
do
no- and
something
we-
to get
you
noticed.
have
Yeah.
to, you've got to hustle, no matter, even if you can raise 50 million for your company, it doesn't mean everything's going to work. You've got to hustle. And so today when I speak, I'm going to show the audience where and how you need to apply that hustle and how you tell a story that grabs people's attention. And having got my start, really, if you walk into a Ralph Lauren store, for example, no one grabs you and says, hey, let me explain our brand to you. We have to be able to communicate the brand without any words being spoken. And that's what we did with our props. And then I learned from the big companies, wait, I don't have a brand myself. So we got busy building our own brand. And then and people started asking, how did you go from your little garage to this? And so I started speaking. And that's when I found my real true calling to do this.
And all of that, resulting in that amazing story, is now what kind of puts you in position to be the inspiration that you are, the failures, the successes, the lessons learned, the risks taken, the bottom that you hit
Right.
and came out of. That's now.
And the first time I
it's a
told
great
that story,
people relate
yeah,
to it.
they
Like,
do,
wow.
and I didn't realize how much people would. And people come to me saying, I'm there right now.
I feel that,
or I've
right,
been there.
I get that.
And sometimes when I tell that story, people think, oh, that was that one time. No, it doesn't happen just once. Sometimes in the journey of building a business. Sometimes, I mean, there was one point, being down to my last 20 seemed bad, but imagine being minus 6.4 million, because I've been there too. And it's like,
That's another story.
So effectively, you have to really remember to stay with your hustle, because you can reach a certain level of success and you kind of ease off and you kind of think, I mean, I remember when I was making a really great amount of money, I stopped haggling. I thought, well, I've got money and they don't have as much, so and you know what? That was me not being on my game. People love haggling. It's actually relationship building if you do it nicely. So you've got to stay on your hustle. You've got to, cash is king, and just because you have more cash, it doesn't mean you should just throw it away, which I actually remember doing. So we've got to stay focused.
You do have to stay so committed. You got to believe. You got to stay focused. I have a question as an aside on a somewhat of a personal level, but do you know a gentleman from the region here named Bobby Mellett? Bobby Mellett was in the exact same business working for Ralph Lauren outside of, where was he? He was in Montauk, I want to say, is where he was based outside of New York. And he was doing the exact same thing, the display work, and created a huge business out of that. Obviously, that business
He
is
must
good.
have been copying me.
I know Bobby. Well, he's actually from Flint.
I'd love to meet him because
I can
haven't
connect
heard
you
of him.
guys. I can
Right.
connect you guys. I remember when he was doing that right about the same time.
Okay.
And doing it very, very successfully.
Interesting.
Yeah. A proud member of our Michigan community.
Great.
So, well, it's amazing. We've heard some themes, RJ, during the week about having a vision, believing in it, being bold, being brave. I love that. We heard from somebody we interviewed said, you've got to be brave. Lindsay Walega from Siren PR. And that resonates with you. You got to be bold. You got to be brave, right? You've got to think differently. If you think me too and same old, you're not going to get noticed.
No. In fact, what tends to happen, people have this ambition to start a business and they get so excited and they're going to change the world. And then you start and all of a sudden you've quit your job and you don't have any regular income and you're like, okay, well, how's it done in this industry? And the big mistake is looking over your shoulder and saying, oh, look, that's how it's done. That's how people do it in this industry. And they'll go and spend money and time, resources, literally bolting on camouflage. Websites that are similar to everyone else's, voicemail messages similar, videos that are similar. And before you know it, you're invisible. And then
Blah,
people
blah,
are wondering,
blah, blah,
how
blah,
come
right?
I've done all of these things and no one can see me? It's because you camouflaged yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to be covering today, is identifying those areas where you've gone and accidentally become invisible, or you're actually boring your customers, or in fact, have you ever been to a website where you're like, this is so bad, it's actually, I'm not even interested in doing business with them.
Well, of
They've
course.
actually
I mean,
spent
whether
money.
it's a website, a store, or any kind of business.
Yeah.
I mean, right, of course.
They spent money
course.
telling you to go away, basically.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
So give us some tips today. You're going to give it, don't burn out all your good stuff. You know what? I'm sure that's impossible. How could you burn out all your good stuff? That's not going to happen. We're not worried about that with you. Give us some tips. Give us some things. How do you stand out? You don't want to be ridiculous when you brand and when
Exactly.
there's a fine line, there's a balance.
There's a key word called authenticity.
Authentic. Even when you're being extreme, you still got to be authentic.
Actually, I'm going to tell a story that's nothing to do with me, but I think it's relevant to the question you're asking. There was a show on television about a car dealership in Las Vegas. It was called The King of Cars. They're still in business. They're all over the place. But the guy who owned the place was a big rapper dude, wore all the big jewelry, and he did these crazy branding stunts, really. The ugliest truck competition, and people would drive for miles with their ugly-ass trucks that they'd jacked up 15 feet or whatever. And
now, I don't know if this is going in a good direction or a bad direction, but so far, I think it's fun.
No, this is
an example of
a success story. Absolutely,
exactly. Okay,
and,
good.
And
so far, I like this.
Yeah, they would do a special deal where they're going to sell a car for $1. They would allow customers. They would put a salesperson over a dunking machine, and you could throw the ball, and if you hit the target, he gets dunked into the tank, and all sorts of crazy things that just drew massive crowds, and their sales were astronomical. And then other dealerships thought, oh, well, look, that dunking thing's a good idea, we'll do that. And it's just totally not authentic to who they are as a brand.
Exactly.
They're just copying. So, and then they're scratching their heads, well, how come we are not drawing big crowds? So you've got to, I'm going back to the beginning now, when we were on that balcony in Santa Barbara, because it was a friend of a friend's place who said, you can stay for a couple of days. So she was at work. She worked in a restaurant, And we're watching the sun go down, having this, like, we're going to start a business. So we literally couldn't find any paper. All we could find were napkins. And it's like, this is so stereotypical, like a napkin and a pen. But
Right, the napkin
we started
sketch,
talking,
yeah.
well, why would we start a business? And the first thing we wrote down was adventure. Because I was so bored of my life, I wanted an adventure. I can't remember all the other things, but I know that around number 7, it was any haircut we ever want. Because we'll be our own bosses. We can have any haircut we want. And then we got to 9, it's like, money. We should make money.
Number 9?
Number 9. But the truth is, that word adventure has been at the very heart of my brand for the whole time.
Because that's the way you live.
Because it's how I
It's who-
live.
it's
It's
you.
who I am. So
It's
it
who
comes
you are.
naturally to me.
Yeah.
So we have to look at, one of the things we'll be covering today is core values. Even
Yes.
we have to pretend a brand is a person.
Yes.
And a person has a personality. So what's the personality of your brand? We've got to get into that. What's your attitude? Like, I'll give you an example. If I'm walking out of a store and I hold the door for somebody and they walk through and don't say anything, my attitude is I say, you're welcome. I'm not just going to let that drop because I just did something nice and they were rude. So that gives me cues on my kind of tongue-in-cheek attitude that affects my branding, and it resonates on an emotional level with my customers.
How did you come up with the name World Famous Company? I mean, you see that and you're like, boom.
It was obvious.
Actually, the truth is, I was writing my book, and I was trying to come up with a title, and every time I came up with the best title ever, I would go to Amazon, and someone else had already got that title.
I know what that
just
does.
kept going, and I was getting so frustrated. Actually, my title came from. Have you ever heard of Pike's Fish Market, Pike's
In
Place
Seattle.
Oh, it's Seattle. Sure.
where they throw the fish?
Right.
And I was always so inspired about them because their brand story and their branding and their brand behavior made their fish store make more money than all the other fish stores in the entire Pike's Place market. And their vision, and I remember reading it this one day as I'm working on my book.
interesting.
And their goal was to become world famous.
Huh.
And I'm like,
That's it.
And I thought, there's no way that will be available. There's no way.
But a funny thing, here you are saying, do you know about the fish store in Pike's Place that throws
And you
the
know
fish?
about it, right?
Immediately,
Yeah,
of
right.
course, right.
Because they're doing something
Now,
out
now,
of
if
the
you
box.
said, do you know about Joe's Fish Market, the third stall from the left as you walk in, that would, I'd be like, no, I
Right.
don't know it.
Exactly.
And there's the difference.
Exactly.
There's the difference.
Exactly. So
Fish throwing.
so many people think, and as we see on the screen, there's all these logos. And so many people come to me, even sometimes after watching my presentation, and they're like, here, look at my brand, because they think their logo is their brand. It's not.
No, that's
It's
right.
literally a signpost
That's right.
telling you, okay, you're in the right place, if that's what you're looking for. Your brand is about the relationship. Your brand is about the story.
It's about the
Right?
story, and it's
Because
about
you remember the throwing of the fish, right? It's a story. Humans are hardwired to understand narrative. We make sense of the whole world that we live in by stories. And if we don't give them the right information or enough information, we literally make things up every single day. So in order to own the narrative, in order to own the attention of your customer, you have to have a kick-ass brand story that is easy to remember, like throwing the fish.
Now, let me ask you this. Not everybody has such a colorful story to tell. Not everybody's going to come up with a gimmick to do the ugliest truck and the fish throwing and everything else. You know, what I'm trying to drive at here is that there are a few creative breakthroughs that we're talking about now because they're the examples of great success out there. There are a few, but not every average person and every average company has, seemingly on the surface of it, a clever little thing or a great story or a great narrative. It could be just, I want to support my kids and pay my mortgage, and I'm fighting hard and I'm working hard and I've gone from my day job to. So sometimes you got to find the story, right? You got to root it out. You got
It's
to dig
always
deeper.
right
And
under your nose.
is there always a story?
There always is a story.
There's always a story. That's a
I
given.
was just doing an exercise with a company just yesterday here in Detroit. And we did an exercise which we're going to do today in the presentation. And it was about choosing a trait of yours that you are sure you have. And one of the people in the audience, in the group, said a great word. He said, I'm paranoid. And I'm like, brilliant word. Because what does that cause you to be? And he said, really detail-oriented, because
Interesting.
I get paranoid I'm going to make a mistake. That's a great storyline, because everybody has, a storyline has to be about what other people can relate to.
So the storyline might have been, if you were to then take that and craft it, give us an example how that translates.
Well, the company, they're a marketing company.
Yep.
So if we used that storyline saying, I'm paranoid that I wouldn't have any customers, or I'm so paranoid I'm
So I
going to do
attend
a
to
kick-ass job
every
for you.
detail. I don't want to
And this is
fail.
just in its-
Go the extra mile.
This
Yeah?
is just in its formative stage. There's there's more to it than just that one idea. So we've got to look at several elements. So I'm not going to say
But that's a point of entry.
but
That's something to grab onto
it's a
and
way-
build from. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
and
really
it's really we have to
interesting.
look at the bigger picture of why are we here? Because some people, they do just want to be. I mean, one of my key phrases is, with a business without a brand is just a vendor, and vending is for machines. If we had a vending machine right here and the identical vending machine across town, would you bother going across town? You wouldn't. You'd just use this
It's
one.
convenience,
Because-
efficiency.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
if you're just vending, so many business owners, they're like, oh, the market's so fickle. People are so fickle. It's like, well, actually, no, you're making them fickle, because you're just trying to sell your goods or services. You're not creating a brand. You're not creating a story. You're not creating a relationship. So when you create a relationship, people, like, for example, every time I fly to England, I guarantee you I'm flying Virgin Atlantic. I'll try and get the best price I can, but I'm flying Virgin because I love that
The
brand.
experience.
It's the experience.
Yeah.
So, it's the secret is being able to connect with your customers, with them knowing that there's an ocean of choices, yet they just want you.
Imagine that.
And it's absolutely doable, and many companies have experienced that.
We always look for breakthrough thinking, and I got to tell you that you broke down some walls today when you said there is always a story.
Always.
I love that.
I'll tell you why. Because every single human being understands the world they live in by using narrative.
Right, and narrative that's relatable. And it
Story.
doesn't have to be
We have to be
fantastical,
able to
does it?
relate.
Or does it? It doesn't have to be.
No.
It just
In
has to be
fact-
relatable.
in fact,
it has to be appreciated.
The more real, the
Yeah,
better.
exactly.
I used to worry, like, oh gosh, do I have a story that's as good
You're
as
right,
going to
we
landing
gotta
on
push
the
this,
moon?
we gotta push this.
You know,
Right,
or
exactly.
going to
Exactly.
Mars. Like, no, I
No.
don't. I've got a story of going broke. So how do I use that? Well, really, really well, we found out. So it's truth, it's authenticity, and one of the things I always say in life, it's not what happens to you that defines you, it's how you deal with it. That's what defines you. So that's where the story comes from.
Just switching gears a little bit, often we see one brand over here, and then they somehow magically come together and they both just like go whoosh up. What kind of opportunities do you see out there that, or maybe you've been involved in that, where there's that co-branding where you can really take both brands or
Great question.
multiple brands and bring them up to
So
a higher
I was
level?
doing a presentation in Las Vegas where I live, and in the audience was a lady who owns LV Woman magazine, and we started chatting. Her and her husband, my husband and I, we hit it off with them, and we just went out for a few drinks, and we were having such a good time. And then the next day I thought, what am I thinking? We should co-create something, and so we are. We're doing a 2-day Kick-Ass Brand Academy. It's going to be in September. We're launching it in July, and we don't compete, but we can win together. So we're actually creating a headshots, happy hour, and branding events, book clubs for free, and those people who want to go further and get coaching and go to the weekend workshop will do that together.
And
So
what do you call that event?
it's called the Kick-Ass Brand Academy.
By the world famous company.
Yeah.
Yeah, an LV Woman magazine.
And LV Woman magazine and David Tyerman. That's a name that we'll remember, really. I would love to connect with you further.
Awesome.
If people are listening to this and they're inspired by it, as I know I am, and I'm sure as you are too, RJ,
Sure.
knowing the importance of branding and getting to the essence of it and getting a great story and getting people out there in your marketplace to therefore pay attention to you and do business with you, how do they interface with you to make that connection?
WorldFamousCompany.com. You can email me through there. it's also davidtyerman.com, but that's harder to spell. So just remember world famous company. And we're not talking about world famous means being world famous in your market. It doesn't necessarily
That's
have to
true.
mean that you're a household name across the world. It means you're famous in your market, and that's the goal.
I have to tell you something interesting on that point. There was a young boy that lived in a neighborhood of ours, and I was asking him a question about, the neighborhood. And he said to me, and again, children sometimes have the best way of just putting things right in perspective. And he said, we were talking about going places, and I was traveling a lot for business. He was asking me about that, and he said, my whole world is right here, and this was his, he had his little skateboard and his thing. This
Right.
was his world. And so to that point, there you are.
Right.
I love it.
Awesome.
You're an amazing guy.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We're
Thank
really
you,
happy
David.
to have
That's
you.
great. Awesome.
Thanks for coming to Detroit.
I
Okay.
love Detroit.
We love that. We love you. All right, David Tyerman. David Tireless. David Tyerman. You've worn us out. All right, back with more on Startup Nation in a minute. There it is. All right. Live streaming from Detroit Startup Week. RJ King, Jeff Sloan, Startup Nation, and Detroit Startup Week. We've had a good run over a couple of days interviewing some important people here in the community, and now we've got somebody who's arguably created the greatest source of inspiration and confidence in this community. John Oberheid from Duo Security.
I appreciate the praise. You could also say you're reaching really down in the bottom of the barrel now to bring
I
me
got to
here,
tell you
but-
what, we could say that, but we cannot say that about you and about what the company has meant here. I mean, all kidding aside, I know you know too, to have a success like that here in this community, not only in terms of bringing the money back and having it be available here in the region to foster further entrepreneurial growth, but the inspiration, the confidence that it builds is invaluable.
Yeah, we've seen that impact already in terms of some of our we had quite a mix of investors, but a lot from the West Coast, some local, some from the Valley, and we've already seen kind of influx of interest and capital in other Michigan companies because they saw that hey, it is certainly possible to build a successful business here and have
That's
a great
that's it.
great
right
investor
there.
outcome. And
Right.
so a lot of the even maybe more tightly scoped Valley investors that said like we only do Bay Area, we only do San Francisco, are now starting to look elsewhere and looking at Michigan in particular.
Amazing.
John, talk about you put your your name on the door, so to speak, open up Duo Security. And what were some of the things that led to the success? And then once it came, how did you manage it and enhance it?
Yeah, so we started the company back in 2009, and I don't know if we had a door to put our name on at that point, but we were actually out of a co-working space called the Tech Brewery that we also helped manage for other startups. So it was kind of a great community to start the company in, being surrounded by other founders and entrepreneurs that were going through the same struggles that we were. If you listen to our competitors, they said it's 5 people in the basement. We said, hey, no, it's actually 6 people in a co-working space. But when we started the company maybe a little differently than many startups. Oftentimes, an entrepreneur has an idea and says, there's this problem out there, I want to go solve it, and I'm going to start a company to go do that. We had maybe a little bit of an inverse approach of Doug and I had known each other from the security industry, from Ann Arbor, from Arbor Networks, which is a previous company, and we said we want to build the next great cybersecurity company, but we don't know what problem we want to solve yet. So let's go start the
You
company.
knew the space was hot, and
Yeah,
that was your
yeah.
area of expertise.
Yeah, we knew the space inside and out, and that's why we wanted to do something different because it's a really kind of painful industry. It's important, totally critical. Like
Critically, and more so every day.
yeah, certainly. As one of our investors said, it's cybersecurity is one of the largest problems on a geopolitical scale for the next few decades, and that's
Exactly.
totally the case as we've seen over the past few years. But it's kind of what we grew up in the security community, and we just saw an entire $100 billion industry full of companies that were selling snake oil, that were spreading, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about like, you're going to get hacked. It's not a matter of if, but when. And we saw a lot of organizations just kind of struggling to protect themselves. They couldn't even afford the security products that were being sold, and oftentimes you buy the product and it ends up costing you even more to deploy it, to maintain it. Your users hate it. And so there's a lot of just bad practices in the industry from a customer relationship perspective, from a business perspective, and we said we can do this dramatically different, like do the right thing, kind of in quotes.
So, but at some point you had to say to yourself, we're going to do the right thing, but we got to now figure out specifically what we're going to do. You got to have a product, right? So you then undertook a research phase, a brainstorming phase?
Yeah,
where you guys
we
said, what are we gonna
brainstormed,
right.
Every idea under the
Whiteboard,
sun.
spitball.
And I think it really helped crystallize our philosophy on the business as a whole, because in that time in 2009, iOS and the iPhone were brand new. First iPhone was launched, I think, in 2007. Even, Android phones were brand new. We were still in a different era of mobility. We were in a different era of cloud computing adoption. Things like Office 365, like didn't even exist yet. So a lot of the technologies that were kind of this next kind of massive wave of disruption of organizations, of how do you manage all the devices that your users are bringing into their job, all these cloud apps that they're leveraging for good intention to be productive. How do you kind of secure that new environment? And, we were exploring really hot areas of, mobile security and cloud security and, doing what we did at Arbor, but at a whole nother scale. And we just kind of went back to basics and said, let's talk to customers. What a concept, right? Go talk to your customers, figure out what problems they have, and figure out how to solve them. And customers just said, hey, we're getting breached because of phishing attacks. If I can convince you to give up your password and I can log in as you to your corporate applications, all of my other security controls don't matter. If I can impersonate you
And that was
as a
happening a
user.
lot.
Yeah, it was
That was a big
happening.
problem, huge problem.
Out the
Still
wazoo.
happening.
Yeah, it's still happening. And we're like, yeah, okay, like we understand that. Like phishing and password stealing is a problem. There is a solution in the market for it. It's painful. Everyone universally hates it. It's this incumbent technology that was literally invented in 1985. It's the oldest sort of product in computer security. And, like these are all knowns. Like they're not anything surprising. But we had to, in some ways, like get over our own ego. There was an expectation of like, oh, Doug and John are starting a security company. They're going to come up with something like super cool and super sexy, and it's going to be like the hottest thing in the market. And we had to say, no, we're going to go back to basics. And we're going to solve.
A little basic.
Yeah.
I don't want to say simple, but I mean, it's a simple problem. People understand the problem, and you had to come up with a solution to that. But as you're saying, it wasn't sexy.
Yeah. It wasn't sexy. It was
Right.
like, we know this is the right solution. Now let's just commit to figuring out how we're going to solve it in a completely disruptive way.
Do you remember the moment the two of you came together and said, this is it?
Yeah, but it was kind of like we know we should do this, and we know it's the right problem to solve, but we still had to get over that gap of like, what are we going to do that's dramatically different? Like, there's so many incumbents in the space. In hindsight, there was a perfect situation of they're completely ripe for disruption.
Right, you still didn't have a product yet. You didn't have a solution yet.
Yeah.
You identified the area you wanted to focus on, but you still now needed to come up with a solution.
And that was a leap of faith to say, like, okay, we know that we're, creative enough to come up with something different. And again, we really focused on how do we make security easy for organizations, easy for end users. Because if you guys probably have some interactions with security technology in your day-to-day lives, it's usually pain, right? It's like,
Of course.
telling you that you're a bad person and that you can't go to that website, or you can't,
Or you don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah. It's like this esoteric thing that, like, I
Speak for yourself.
like, I'm trying to do the right thing for my company or for, my security, and we took a different approach. Is that, like, we're not building security for computers or for mobile devices or for networks or for infrastructure. We're building security for people, for humans. Like, that's the weakest link in a lot of these organizations that techers are going after. So how do we make sure we really design it in the right way to be adopted and utilized? And so that we kind of formatted our company's mission of how do we democratize security by making it easy and effective. It sounds so straightforward and simple. Like, of course you want it to be easy and effective, but as I mentioned, the security industry was full of ineffective solutions that were kind of pain in the ass to use. So it was a completely different approach to kind of delivering our technology and our business.
And so you did what? You came up with what?
So I think, those mega trends I mentioned of cloud and mobility in the early, 2010 timeframe, that was really what led to a lot of dramatic success for us in that the introduction of these technologies into organizations, like embracing mobility, embracing cloud, created all sorts of problems that your existing security technologies could not protect.
And did success come fast?
I think we had a little bit of we always look back at the 9-10 years we've been doing this. We had a little bit of a slow start. We bootstrapped for the first year. We raised a small seed round of $1 million. Nowadays, there's like $10 million seed rounds, which is crazy. And we hired a couple folks. We were 5 people and 6 people and 7. It was really kind of long end of the hockey stick before it really took off. So it wasn't until our A round that we raised from Google Ventures that kind of set us on this incredible kind of hypergrowth trajectory of basically like doubling our team and tripling or doubling our
Was it the
revenue.
money that came in that then led to the resources that you were able to, amass to, or what was it that got you, instead of moving horizontally, moving up on the hockey stick?
I think it was a little bit of both, but we spent the first couple years really building a solid foundation for our product. And we always knew that from a business perspective, we wanted to build a SaaS business with recurring revenue. We saw the power that had in terms of, I can go to your website, I can see the pricing, I can click and sign up, I can try the product, and I can buy it without having to interact with anyone in terms of the company,
Yep,
in terms of,
yep.
you don't have to talk to a sales rep if you just want to plug in a credit card and start using the product. And we GA'd the product on our website in 2011, and from there it really kind of took off on its own, where we had companies like Facebook that would call us up and say, hey, we're ready to buy the product. And we're like, did you
What?
use it? Or
Right,
did
right.
you sign up? And they're like, yeah, we did.
So was there a moment when you guys looked at each other and said, wow?
Yeah, there was quite a few. And
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sure.
it just kind of was this new trajectory for the organization that we really had to, had that awesome problem of figuring out, like, how do we
Yeah.
scale to address the amazing
I think the essence of what
opportunity.
I'm driving is that entrepreneurs, they believe in what they're doing. They have this vision. They pursue it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Even in an entrepreneur's mind who's doing it and feels he or she is on a success path, the validation comes, much after your own confidence comes, your own belief comes, and when that validation does come, it can come in varying degrees of intensity. There was clearly a moment for you guys where, the validation came in a big wave.
Yeah.
And you knew you were onto something not just good, but something really significant.
Yeah, we had, that A round I mentioned with Google Ventures. A lot of everything after our seed round, our investors all came completely inbound from hearing about us. And we talked with the folks at Google Ventures and said, like, how did you find out about us? And they're like, well, we talked to our entire portfolio of companies we've invested in and asked them, what do you see that's exciting that are up and coming startups? And they had a bunch of high-flying tech companies that said, this 2-factor cybersecurity company out of Michigan is the most exciting thing we see. And the partners at
Right.
GV were like, what? Like, wow, that's weird. We should probably take a look.
And then there's a moment in time after the validation. I had the opportunity to interview a couple guys who also have another unicorn here in the state emerging, just to make out a major investment, put their value at over $1 billion, another tech company here. And they said that there was a moment where after the validation comes and they say, wow, this is really incredible, this is going to be big, then there's fear.
Yeah.
Like at any moment, one wrong move, can topple, or something unforeseen coming out of the blue, whether it's competition or a change in the environment or a product breakdown that all of a sudden calls into question, whether the product really works, and all these kinds of things that you do your best to try to manage. But there's a moment of, now we just got to get this to the finish line, because, it's scary keeping it all together,
Yeah.
right?
We were just
I mean,
talking
fear.
about this
Yeah.
at a panel down at Detroit Startup Week just about an hour ago, and it is a real challenge and opportunity when if you're just starting the company, it's your own livelihood and career that's on the line. As soon as you bring new people on,
Right.
suddenly some of that risk is transferred to them. You're not responsible for their livelihood and career development.
Right.
and you close a round of financing, and like that's exciting. You got money in the bank. Like we had 7 figures in our seed round. The wire hits. Everyone's excited. Now we got this runway. We can hire more people. But there's this realization that like this is not a bank account full of money. This is a timer. The timer that only counts down. And the more
That's exactly right. It's a
the more you
timer.
hire,
Yeah.
the more you expand, the faster it's counting down. And it really the responsibility is additive as the company grows. That now it's not just building a great product, it's not just building a great business, it's building a great organization. It's building a foundation for all of the employees that come on board and choose to go on this crazy ride with you. That's a kind of a heavy burden, but also a really exciting thing when you can see the team thrive and grow in their capabilities and grow in their career.
And the company sold for what just recently?
2.35 billion.
Yeah. Wow.
Talk about what you're working on today and where things are going for you.
Yeah, so we closed the acquisition with Cisco late last year, so we're about 8-9 months in, and I often get that question of like, how's it going? And sometimes people answer the question like, and the voice goes up like 3 octaves, like, it's good. I feel good that I can confidently answer like it's really good without raising my voice. And that is, I'd say we're just as busy as we were before, but there's so much broader opportunity, not just within Cisco, but within the security industry as a whole. Security is a $100 billion business. Cisco is actually the largest cybersecurity provider in the world, and that amount of scale is very interesting to our product, to our business, because we can leverage that footprint to really achieve our mission of democratizing security. How do we bring really complicated stuff to organizations of all shapes and sizes, but also ensuring that Cisco's the place that our employees can continue to grow their own personal careers.
We've had an opportunity to ask a couple of people, how do you measure success? In your case, obviously success is extreme. I mean, you probably didn't set out to say, I want to have that kind of success. Of course, everyone would love to have that story, but practically speaking, this doesn't happen all the time. And it doesn't need to in order to have a reasonable measure of success, let alone even an extreme measure of success without going that far. It's got to feel pretty incredible, that moment where you've got it, and whether that's the company now pursuing the acquisition, regardless of the amount, that feeling that an entrepreneur gets validated, because you have this vision. People questioned it. People question all the decisions you made. Personally, I know I can say that to any entrepreneur, and you did it in spite of probably all the people telling you there's a better path for you. There's a safer path, a more secure path. Are you sure you want to do that? Are you making the right decisions? What are you thinking? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that was when I was, getting back to the, how do we build something that's the basics that every company needs to secure themselves? We would talk to, other folks in the industry, and they'd be like, oh, I heard of you guys. Like, what are you guys doing? And we'd be like, strong authentication, like 2-factor, and they're like, oh, that's boring. We'd be like, yeah, but it's kind of important, and that was the maybe the most kind of visceral disbelief of like, yeah, I thought you'd do something cooler. We're like, no, trust us, this will be cool.
And do you feel like now, do you feel that validation, or do you still feel? Do you get up in the morning? Is there something to prove?
I think the most personally gratifying validation is the bigger impact we've had on the security industry of now the next waves of startups that are starting off or kind of in an early stage are saying like, I want to be like Duo. Duo showed that there was a better way to treat our customers, to build products to solve real problems.
How great is that?
Yeah, market in an authentic way. And that's the validation that I really appreciate, because that's what we wanted to set out to show, that you can actually build a business the right way and have good fundamentals and still be successful. Like if you do the right things, the score kind of takes care of itself.
Would it be fair to say you don't need to work another day in your life? You don't need to work another day in your life. I'm going to ask a follow-up question.
I
That would be fair to say,
I always
right?
need to work.
No. No, you probably don't need to work another day in your life, I would assume. But you need to work for different reasons. You want to work. You want to
Yeah,
be productive.
absolutely.
You want to continue to pursue things, improve things, and achieve things, right? That's what's driving you now.
Yeah, there's always
So-
a larger scale to go after.
Of course.
and-
So you gotta. There's, now it's funny. The bar's set high for you. Let me just tell you that, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
The bar's set high for
Yeah.
you. You did that. You did that to your credit, amazingly. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, I think I mean besides like growing our business within Cisco, I think there's a an exciting opportunity to grow the communities that we operate in. You know, Ann Arbor and Detroit being two of those. We also have presence in the Bay Area and Austin and in London, and that's what is exciting to see already happening. Like I mentioned, with new investment influx. But also, our people that have been with the company for many years, they're going to go off and do great things after Duo. They're going to start their own companies, and seeing that kind of bigger impact on the ecosystem is exciting. There was a security company called ISS. It was one of the first internet security companies ever, and they IPO'd and they got bought by IBM. They're down in Atlanta, and it was that sort of catalyst event paired with the talent and mentorship from that company, paired with Georgia Tech as a great, computer science school that just led to this, multi-decade kind of spidering effect of all of these companies that spun out and created this amazing ecosystem. And
How about
we hope
HP
that,
in Silicon Valley, right?
yeah.
I
And we
mean,
hope that Duo can
And
do that for
Duo in Detroit.
for Michigan.
And it even has the D's, Duo and Detroit. It's a great story, and you guys are a huge part of the momentum that we now have. I mean, huge. That now I hear all the time in the venture, incubator, accelerator, startup community, Duo. I mean, that's it. People are looking at that and now believing and wanting to be part of that, inspired by it. Amazing stuff, RJ.
John, just inquiry, I would imagine that going forward, you would, and maybe you're already into it, but there's got to be a pretty big runway for protecting, whether it's called Bitcoin or cybersecurity or cyber currency. Facebook just launched that into that space. Are you guys into that space or looking at it, or because it seems like it's right in your wheelhouse?
It's definitely, I mean, financial services as a whole is a big opportunity for security. If a hacker can, steal money by breaking in the systems, that is a very direct route to monetizing their attacks.
Sure.
And yes, we see a lot of interest in those financial services areas, but it is a different kind of challenge where an attacker can walk off with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency, and there's zero trace. And so making sure that you have strong user authentication, that who's logging into the cryptocurrency website is who they say they are is absolutely critical.
Yeah, great. Could be another huge business here.
How old are you?
35.
35. We expect big things out of you.
Going on 25. Look how young you look.
We expect big things out of you. Wow. John Oberheide, congratulations.
Thank you.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah.
For sure.
Appreciate it.
Well
For sure.
done.
We're happy to have you in the community. We're happy to have you on Startup Nation here and at Detroit Startup Week. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right on. What a great way to end. And we're going to do one more quick shout out to the sponsors. Startup Week Detroit. What a cool thing this is. Incredible. I've learned something. I got inspired. I know you got inspired.
Oh, yeah.
You got inspired. Powered by Quicken Loans in partnership with Venture Catalyst. Sponsors DBusiness, Siren PR, and Dell. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
Right, Billy's right across the street.
Nice.